Do you know what it feels like when your world collapses in a single moment? When everything you thought you knew about your life, about the people you love most, crumbles like ash in your hands. I'm standing here in this godforsaken market somewhere in a country I can't even pronounce the name of, clutching what's left of my handbag like it's going to save me. The fabric is torn, the strap nearly ripped off, and my hands won't stop shaking. The smell of fried fish and incense burns my nostrils, and voices in a language I don't understand crash over me like waves. Where is he? Where is my son? He said he'd meet me back here at 8. It's past midnight now, and the vendors are packing up their stalls. The colorful fabrics that seemed so beautiful this morning now look like funeral shrouds in the dim light. My throat is raw from calling his name, from asking strangers if they've seen him, a tall man with dark hair, wearing a blue shirt. They look at me with pity or annoyance, shaking their heads before turning away. I have no phone, no wallet, no way to reach anyone, and the crushing realization is settling into my bones like poison. This isn't an accident. This isn't him being late or getting lost. My son, my own flesh and blood, has left me here to die. The rage builds in my chest like a fire I can't contain. How dare he? How dare they? Because it wasn't just him, was it? It was her too, his wife with her cold eyes and plastic smile. I should have seen this coming. God, I should have seen it years ago when the phone calls stopped coming. When my opinions became inconveniences. When family dinners turned into performances where I was the unwanted extra, sitting at the table while they talked around me like I was already dead. I remember the eye rolls. Christ, do I remember them. Every time I'd suggest something, maybe we could visit that museum or try that restaurant I read about, he'd look at his wife with that expression. That here she goes again look that made me feel smaller than dirt. And she'd jump in quickly with some excuse, some reason why my ideas were impractical or boring or just plain stupid. But I kept trying, didn't I? I kept believing that maybe if I was more agreeable, more useful, more invisible, they'd want me around. The invitation came 3 months ago. Mom, we want to take you on a trip, he said over the phone, his voice unusually warm. Somewhere exotic. You always talked about traveling when Dad was alive. The kindness in his tone should have been my first warning. When had he ever cared about what I wanted? But I was so desperate for his attention, so hungry for any scrap of affection, that I ignored every instinct screaming at me to be careful. I packed for weeks, folded and refolded my clothes until the creases were perfect. I bought new shoes that pinched my feet but looked nice. I researched the local customs, learned a few phrases in their language, made lists of places I thought we could visit together. Like a fool, I imagined long walks through ancient streets, sharing meals at little cafes, taking pictures together that I could frame and put on my nightstand. Family memories. Real ones for once. But from the moment we arrived, something felt wrong. They'd disappear for hours without explanation, leaving me alone in hotel lobbies while they explored. During meals, they'd speak in whispers, stopping abruptly when I tried to join the conversation. Oh, we were just talking about work, Mom. Nothing interesting. Nothing that included me, they meant. I was baggage they'd brought along out of obligation, not love. The night before they abandoned me, we had dinner at some upscale restaurant with white tablecloths and waiters in bow ties. I tried to order for myself, but my son cut me off. She'll have the fish, he told the waiter, not even asking what I wanted. When I protested, his wife laughed that tinkling, condescending laugh that always made my skin crawl. Let him handle it, Mom. You know how you get confused by foreign menus. Confused? I taught myself 3 languages when your father and I traveled through Europe before you were even born, you miserable bitch. I woke up in the hotel room to silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy and wrong. His bed was made, not slept in, made. Her suitcase was gone. My passport was gone. My wallet, my phone, everything that proved I existed in this world, gone. The panic hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath, making my vision blur. I stumbled to the front desk in my nightgown and slippers, trying to explain, trying to get help. But the staff couldn't understand me, and when they finally grasped what I was saying, they weren't sympathetic. They were irritated. "Room not paid," the desk clerk said in broken English, showing me a screen full of numbers I couldn't read. "You must leave. Now." The humiliation burned through me like acid. They thought I was some kind of vagrant, some crazy old woman trying to scam a free room. Security guards appeared, young men with hard faces who looked at me like I was garbage they needed to sweep away. I was escorted to the street in my pajamas, carrying nothing but my torn handbag with $17 in foreign currency and a broken lipstick. The streets stretched out before me like a maze designed to swallow people whole. Every direction looked the same, narrow alleyways branching off into darkness, signs in scripts I couldn't decipher, the overwhelming smell of sewage and spices and car exhaust. People pushed past me without a glance, their faces closed off, focused on their own lives and problems. Why would they care about some lost old woman? I was invisible here, just as I'd been invisible at home. The hunger came first, a gnawing ache in my stomach that reminded me I hadn't eaten since that awful dinner the night before. Then came the thirst, making my tongue feel thick and useless in my mouth. But worse than the physical pain was the terror creeping through my veins as the sun began to set. What happens to abandoned women in foreign countries? What happens when darkness falls and I'm still wandering these streets with nowhere to go? I found a plastic chair outside a small cafe and collapsed into it, my legs finally giving out. The owner came out and yelled at me in his language, gesturing angrily for me to move. I tried to explain, tried to make him understand, but my words came out as sobs. The rage was eating me alive from the inside. Rage at my son for doing this to me. Rage at myself for being stupid enough to trust him. Rage at the universe for making me so goddamn expendable that my own child could throw me away like trash. That's when I heard the crying. Loud, desperate sobs that cut through the noise of the street like a knife. A young girl, maybe 16 or 17, stumbled toward me, her face streaked with tears and dirt. Her phone was shattered in her hand, the screen a spider web of cracks, and she kept looking around frantically like she was searching for someone. When she saw me, she rushed over, babbling in the same language everyone here spoke, showing me a crumpled piece of paper with an address scrawled on it. For a moment, I almost turned away. I had my own problems, my own nightmare to deal with. What did I owe this stranger? But something in her eyes, that same lost, abandoned terror I felt churning in my own gut, made me stop. I took the paper from her shaking hands and studied the address. I didn't know where it was, but I could read the numbers, the street name. Maybe together we could find it. The walk took over an hour. My feet screamed in those stupid new shoes I'd bought to impress my son, and sweat poured down my back in the humid night air. But the girl stayed close to me, trusting me in a way no one had in years. We stumbled through dark neighborhoods, asking for directions with gestures and pointing, slowly making our way toward whatever home she was desperately trying to reach. When we finally found the address, a modest house behind iron gates with warm light spilling from the windows, the girl broke into a run. She pounded on the gates, calling out, and within seconds they flew open. A man and woman rushed out, followed by what looked like the girl's siblings, all of them crying and laughing and pulling her into their arms. They'd been searching for her for hours, terrified something terrible had happened. Then they noticed me standing awkwardly at the edge of their reunion, dirty and exhausted and clearly not belonging. But instead of dismissing me or shutting the gate in my face, The father approached with tears in his eyes. He took my hands in his and said something I couldn't understand, but his meaning was clear. "Thank you. Thank you for bringing our daughter home." The mother appeared at his side, gesturing for me to come inside, refusing to take no for an answer. Sitting in their living room, wrapped in a soft blanket and holding a bowl of hot soup, I broke down completely. These strangers, people who owed me nothing, who didn't even know my name, were treating me with more kindness than my own family had shown me in years. The soup tasted like love, like safety, like everything I'd been starved for. I couldn't stop the tears from coming, great heaving sobs that seemed to tear something loose inside my chest. They used a translation app on their phone to communicate with me, typing messages back and forth with patient determination. When I finally told them what had happened, how my son had abandoned me, stolen from me, left me to die in a foreign country, the horror on their faces was real. Not polite sympathy or obligation, but genuine human outrage on my behalf. The father immediately started making phone calls, contacting officials, while the mother brought me clean clothes and the daughter sat beside me through the night, holding my hand like I was family. 3 days later, I was on a plane home with temporary documents they'd helped me obtain. But I wasn't traveling alone. The father, Antonio, I learned his name was, came with me, refusing to let me face whatever came next without support. He didn't speak much English, but he'd contacted lawyers in my country, people who specialized in elder abuse cases. The net was already tightening around my son before my plane even landed. The investigation moved faster than I'd expected. Financial records don't lie, and my son had been sloppy in his greed. The apartment I'd lived in for 30 years, the one my husband had bought and paid for, the one that was supposed to be mine until I died, had been sold 6 months ago. The proceeds had vanished into accounts I'd never authorized, signed with my forged signature. Bank statements showed systematic theft going back years, money drained from accounts I'd thought were secure. But it wasn't just the money that destroyed me. It was the messages they found between my son and his wife, casual conversations about how to handle the old lady problem. They called me a burden. They joked about putting me in a home where I'd be someone else's problem. They planned my abandonment like it was a vacation itinerary, complete with timeline and contingencies. Reading those messages felt like being stabbed repeatedly in the heart. The confrontation at his house was surreal. When I appeared at his door with the lawyer and Antonio by my side, the color drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug. He'd thought I was dead, or at least lost forever in some foreign country where my body would never be found. The panic in his eyes was the first honest emotion I'd seen from him in years. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a savage satisfaction. Let him feel afraid. Let him taste the terror I'd lived with on those dark streets. He tried to lie, of course. Claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that he'd been trying to protect me, that the money transfers were for my own good. But the evidence was overwhelming, and his wife, that cold, calculating bitch, immediately threw him under the bus to save herself. He forged everything, she claimed. I told him not to do it. I tried to stop him. The loyalty that had united them against me evaporated the moment real consequences appeared. Testifying in court was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Sitting in that witness box, looking at my son across the room while he refused to meet my eyes, I had to relive years of systematic abuse. Not physical abuse, he was too smart for that, but something more insidious. The constant dismissal of my thoughts and feelings. The gradual isolation from friends and activities. The way they'd made me doubt my own memory, my own judgment, my own worth as a human being. Tell me about your relationship with your son, the prosecutor said gently, and I wanted to scream. How do you explain the slow murder of a mother's heart? How do you describe the way someone can kill you with neglect while keeping you technically alive? I told them about birthdays forgotten, holidays canceled at the last minute, phone calls that went unreturned for weeks. I told them about feeling like a ghost in my own family, present but unseen, breathing but already buried. The defense attorney tried to paint me as a confused old woman, someone unreliable and possibly senile. But the evidence spoke louder than his victim-blaming tactics. Expert witnesses confirmed the forgeries. Financial investigators traced every stolen dollar. Character witnesses testified about my competence, my intelligence, my right to be treated as a human being rather than property to be disposed of. When the judge read the verdict, guilty on all counts, I didn't feel the triumph I'd expected. Instead, there was just emptiness. A hollow space where my love for my son used to live. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison, ordered to pay full restitution, and hit with civil penalties that would follow him for the rest of his life. Justice, they called it. But justice can't give you back a lifetime of Sunday dinners that weren't battlefields. It can't restore a relationship that was built on lies and maintained through cruelty. My new apartment is small, but it's mine. Really mine, with my name on the deed and locks that only I control. The walls are painted yellow because I like yellow, and there are plants on the windowsill because I want plants there. No one asks me if the television is too loud or complains about the books I leave scattered on tables. For the first time in decades, I'm living my life instead of apologizing for taking up space in someone else's. I've found others like me, abandoned parents, elder abuse survivors, people whose families treated them like burdens to be discarded. We meet once a week in a church basement that smells like coffee and disinfectant, and we tell our stories to people who understand. There's Martha, whose daughter moved to another state and changed her phone number. There's Robert, whose son convinced him to sign over his house and then had him evicted. There's Elena, whose grandchildren don't even know her name because their parents poisoned them against her. We're the throwaway generation, the inconvenient parents who lived too long and demanded too much. But we're also survivors, fighters who refuse to disappear quietly into whatever graves our children dug for us. We support each other through the legal battles, the sleepless nights, the crushing loneliness that comes with losing family not to death, but to deliberate cruelty. Some mornings I wake up angry, furious at the years I wasted trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it. Enraged at my own blindness, my willingness to accept crumbs when I deserved a feast. The anger burns through me like wildfire, consuming everything in its path, and I have to grip the kitchen counter until my knuckles turn white, breathing through the rage until it passes. Other mornings, I wake up grateful. Grateful to Antonio and his family, who showed me that kindness still exists in this world. Grateful to the lawyers who fought for me without knowing me. Grateful to be alive, to be free, to have escaped the slow suffocation of living as someone else's burden. The gratitude is quieter than the anger, but it's deeper too, settling into my bones like warmth after a long winter. I'm 73 years old, and I'm finally learning who I am when I'm not trying to be what someone else needs me to be. I like mystery novels and terrible reality television. I eat ice cream for breakfast sometimes because I can. I stay up late talking to my new friends about everything and nothing, making up for decades of enforced silence. I'm discovering that I have opinions about politics, preferences about music, thoughts about the world that matter simply because they're mine. The pain hasn't gone away entirely. I don't think it ever will. There's a sun-shaped hole in my heart that aches on his birthday, on Christmas morning, whenever I see families enjoying each other's company in ways we never could. But the pain is clean now, honest. It's grief for what never was rather than hope for what might still be. And grief, I've learned, is just love with nowhere to go. Standing in my little kitchen this morning, watching sunlight stream through windows I chose and paid for with money that's legally mine, I think about the woman who woke up alone in that hotel room. She believed she deserved whatever cruelty was handed to her. She thought love meant accepting abuse with gratitude. She would have died on those foreign streets rather than fight for herself, because she didn't believe she was worth fighting for. I'm not that woman anymore. The rage that nearly consumed me also transformed me, burning away everything weak and apologetic until only the core remained. I'm stronger now, tougher, less willing to bend until I break. I've learned that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about choosing to see each other as human beings worthy of respect and love. My son made his choice when he forged my signature and left me to die. I've made mine too. I choose to live. I choose to matter. I choose to take up space in this world unapologetically, to speak when I have something to say, to exist loudly and fully until my last breath. It's not the ending I would have written, but it's mine. And that finally is enough. The coffee is getting cold in my cup, but I don't care. I have nowhere to be except here in this moment, in this life I built from the wreckage of the old one. The anger still lives in me, it always will, but it's no longer poison. It's fuel, burning clean and bright, powering whatever comes next. And for the first time in decades, I'm excited to find out what that might be.